This episode of It's the End of the World as We Know It and I Feel Fine was made possible by contributions from slaves like you. Thank you very much.
We have, in fact, had a very rich history that I would call libertarian, not in the sense of the Libertarian Party or the right-wing libertarians. That is a word that has been stolen. The people on the right who call themselves libertarians are proprietarians. Their main concern is to own property as the basis for freedom. They're not interested in freedom, they're interested in what they call liberty. Liberty means the right to turn land into real estate. Liberty means the right to own a redwood forest and cut it down if you want to. Liberty means, and there's nothing wrong with liberty in a more expanded sense, but it is so tied to property that it means literally owning the community. That is not what I mean by the word libertarian. In fact, the word libertarian was invented literally by Élisée Reclus in the 1890s when the word anarchist became illegal in France.
It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine.
Good morning, slaves, and welcome to another edition of It's the End of the World as We Know It and I Feel Fine, the most offensive show to police. But we don't know why.
Behind this wall separating upscale Hollywood homes from the 101 freeway, a massive message of hate directed at all cops.
All cops are babies.
Hey, should we go get some ice cream? I don't think so. We just captured the bad guy.
The words carefully spray painted in different colors above the southbound lanes near Vine.
All cops are burning? Hey, take those squiggly pixels things off. Yeah, that's better. But our team of video ninjas spent countless hours hacking into the TV station's video archive and revealed the mysterious insulting message to the pigs that the news media refuses to share with all of us. And yes, we too are offended by this disgusting message of hate.
I think that's awful. They should never have wrote that about cops.
I understand where things are coming from, but I think that they took it a little too far.
This message is unusual, both in size and subject.
Very offensive to me as a police officer.
Yeah, I know. We took the intro a little bit too far. Anyway, I am your host, the Stimulator, and in case you didn't know, it seems like we have our first full-fledged libertarian revolution of the 21st fucking century.
People, our search is over. On this site we shall build a new town, where we can worship freely, govern justly, and grow vast fields of hemp for making rope and blankets.
Yes, and marry our cousins.
No, not those libertarians. I'm talking about these libertarians. The fierce peeps on the screen are Kurdish rebels from the YPG, or People's Protection Unit, who would take their philosophical imperative from American anarchist thinker Murray Bookchin.
I began to try to explore what were movements and ideologies, if you like, that really were liberatory, that really freed people of this hierarchical sensibility and mentality, of this authoritarian outlook, of this complete assimilation by the work ethic. And I now began to turn very consciously toward anarchist views.
Much like Bookchin, many Kurds who have been fighting those scary motherfuckers from ISIS, or Islamic State, used to be commies too. That is, until their leader Abdullah Öcalan started reading Bookchin books while he was in jail. The Kurds are indigenous peeps from the Middle East. They have no piece of land to call their own, so over 20 million of them are scattered in several countries including Syria, Iraq, Turkey, and Iran. These folks have been trying to establish a homeland called Kurdistan for about 100 fucking years, but selfish-ass motherfuckers don't want to break them off a piece so that they can set up shop and gangsta chill. And like many ethnic minorities, they are treated like shit and are relegated to second-class citizen status. So, they did what most landless peeps without many options do. Get some trainings in weapons and guerrilla tactics and start fucking shit up. In 1978, Öcalan, the handsome motherfucker with the killer stash we saw earlier, unleashed the PKK, or Kurdistan's People's Army, and from 1984 on, they murdered and kidnapped Turkish politicians, attacked the Turkish army, and sabotaged key infrastructures. In 1999, the criminals in action from the Gringo intelligence agency caught Oshala and gave him up to the Turks, who put him in his own special jail in the island of Marmara. It is there that he read bookchin books and became an anarchist. Well, nah, not exactly like that, but he dug the idea so much that he told all his peeps to get some bookchin books and read them.
Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book!
Fast forward to 2012. The Syrian civil war is raging, and Kurds took over the towns of Kobani, Amuda, and Afrin and turned them into autonomous zones. The liberated areas known as Rojava are organized from the bottom up, and this horizontal structure governs many aspects of daily life, from food preparation to their armed forces. Oh, and check this, no fucking taxes.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
They set up a People's Protection Unit made up of men and women, Christians, atheists, and Muslims who fight side by side to protect their newly formed commune.
This is a consensus-based, democratic way of life. It could become the way forward for Syria, Iraq, Turkey, Lebanon. It is a really advanced form of democracy.
I say no difference between female and male. For us, both of them can join with each other to fighting against ISIS.
I'm a Christian, and this place is for everyone. We will protect all sects, Kurds, Muslims, Christians, and Arabs. We just want everyone to live in peace and harmony.
Yep, gender equality and religious freedoms are key features of Rojava. And that has the fascist head choppers from ISIS in a hysterical panic-induced hissy fit.
So what are you doing?
What am I doing?
What are you doing?
Nothing much.
What, my plans?
What are your plans?
Are you?
Yes.
I'm gonna fucking kill you!
This is because the examples set by these neo-libertarians could thwart ISIS's plans to transform the whole region into one backwards-ass caliphate, where women are slaves and anyone else who doesn't agree with their worldview gets their noggin surgically removed.
ISIS is not a threat to a single nation. It's a threat to all humanity. It's like a disease, like cancer spreading everywhere.
Em kurdin ser blindin li dünya yetim rindin werin deste khobdin deste me wunj denge kholdin li bakur li bashur li rojlat em azadi khwazin jbo walat jba jare mahabbat chiya yararat evine walat da hariken ab dijlo frat eski mehval un munasnakın es khorteki kurdim es kurdistanım mamund bejin em jvolat parizin mun hatta iro chikrine ka bejin em kurd birindar em kurd evindar em kurd ashti khwaz em kurd yekti khwazin Kasero kapo, KBJ kani Wana alazad li ser chiatani Dünya dzani wan jane khodan Tim li ber khodan ser hildan jbo Kurdistan Em kurdin Aleme rengi rojli Ser blindin Rengi me keski suruzin Em kurdin Kurdistan em khosh her derim werin em herim vide Em kurdin Aleme rengi rojli Ser blindin Rengi me keski suruzin Em kurdin Kurdistan em khosh her derim werin em herim
In 1999, in so-called North America, anarchists and anti-authoritarians took the international spotlight when they fucked shit up at the World Trade Organization meetings in Seattle. It is here where TV networks first broadcasted anarchist riot porn across their airwaves to the joy and shock of many. But for many decades, anarchists and anti-authoritarians have been developing tools and techniques of resistance that go way beyond smashy smash. And while they might not have the same visual impact as a good fucking riot, these techniques and practices help in constructing robust movements that can help overthrow capitalism, patriarchy, and the motherfucking state.
It's treason, then.
So, to find out more about some of these tactics, I spoke with Chris Dixon, author of Another Politics. Hey Chris, how the fuck are you?
I'm doing well, it's great to be here.
So, can you explain this concept of Another Politics?
The name of the book, Another Politics, actually comes from initially a collective based in New York called the Another Politics is Possible Collective, which was also a study group. And they also actually organized a delegation to go to the first U.S. Social Forum in 2007 called the Another Politics is Possible Delegation that brought about 100 people from more than a dozen different community-based organizations. And these folks were drawing directly on the Zapatista rebels in Chiapas, Mexico, and the kinds of vocabulary that the Zapatistas have developed around the other campaign and other ways of doing politics. So this was the kind of an origin of the idea of Another Politics. It's not something that I created. It's something I've taken up to use, however, in talking about a kind of broad set of anti-authoritarian, anti-colonial, anti-capitalist, anti-oppression politics that I see as being shared across a bunch of different movement sectors and people engaged in different kinds of political activities. And I like the term another politics because it's still something that's in process.
Why do you use the term anti-authoritarian? Wouldn't it be easier to just say anarchist?
I think there are many people involved in prison abolitionist politics who wouldn't necessarily call themselves anarchists, but who actually have a lot of connection and affinity with a kind of anti-statist, anti-oppression, anti-capitalist orientation. Similarly, I think there are many people coming out of anti-racist feminist politics or women of color feminist politics who, again, might not call themselves anarchists, but actually have a lot of sort of broad similarities with this kind of emerging shared perspective.
I heard you say in a talk that sometimes anarchists are static in the tactics that they use, and you refer to a quote by direct action activist David Solnit, that our actions should be laboratories for resistance. Break it down for us.
That's not just a term from David Solnit, by the way. That was a term that people used more generally in the so-called anti-globalization movement or global justice movement. And I like this term, laboratories of resistance, as a way of thinking about movements and thinking about the work that we do, because I think it points to the problem where often we can find one particular way of doing things, whether it's particular kind of street tactics, particular way of making decisions together, particular kind of way of building organizations or organizing, and then just repeating that over and over and over again, even when it's not actually helping us move toward what we want. And so I think instead we should take this perspective of let's experiment, let's try things out, and think about what we're doing as an ongoing learning process together.
And what the fuck is Critical Resistance?
Critical Resistance is an organization that developed out of the movement against the prison industrial complex. It was really emerging in the 1990s. And by the late 1990s, there were more and more people on the kind of radical wing of that movement who were coming into or already had an abolitionist politics, meaning that they were interested in trying to do away with all institutions of incarceration, and actually the whole network of institutions related to policing and surveillance and criminalization and imprisonment more generally. And so Critical Resistance came together first in conferences and then actually coalesced into a set of chapters in different parts of the United States. And there have been different chapters in different cities at different times. There's a few different chapters in the US right now. And Critical Resistance is this kind of national organization to coordinate some of this work of fighting against the prison industrial complex. And their campaigns look different in different cities. In some places, people are really involved in fighting against prison construction, which is often cited in rural areas. In other places, people are really involved in trying to push against how the state allocates resources, right? Right now, so many resources actually go into policing and prisons, and there could be other kinds of priorities that we could be pushing for that would actually be about helping people in some way or providing people with things that they actually need.
In your talk, you say that in our communities, there is a tendency to treat each other like shit. Can you share your ideas about this and where the fuck does it come from?
I think if we're gonna be living in a very stratified, unequal, hierarchical society, it requires intense kinds of dehumanization. It requires people to actually take on the practices of dehumanizing other people. I think that in movements, especially at their high points, there are possibilities for us to connect to other ways of relating to people that are based on more positive values, like appreciation, respect, openness, honesty, listening, equality, things like that. But the challenge here, I think, is that often there still is a lot of people treating each other like shit, even within activist groups and movements of various kinds. There are many ways that those dominant ways of relating seep into our movements and end up coloring what happens and how we relate with one another. I still think we should try and strive toward other better ways of relating. I think that's actually how we build successful, inviting movements that have some resilience, that can stick around and actually attract more and more people and move toward winning what we want on a larger scale. And I think that requires us to try and figure out how we create opportunities in movements for us to experience our best selves and the best selves of other people.
Is there anything else you want to say?
I just wanted to say, let's think about winning, and let's actually have some confidence in ourselves and in other people to go about trying to do that.
Thanks, Chris. And that about does it for this edition of It's the End of the World as We Know It and I Feel Fine. The tactic of crowdfunding has worked well for us, and wage slaves everywhere donate small portions of their labor to help this anti-capitalist media anti-spectacle be a reality. So, much gratitude this week to Bruno, Dub, Jenny, Shiva, Scott, Anders, Loam, Monica, Ania Akiki, Cadius, Robin, Jaffo, Victor, Mika, Raster, Rez, All Cats Are Beautiful, Carlos, Blade, Serena, Steve, Adrian, Jan, Oakland Werewolves, Artist, Darlingtonia, Barb, Tamea, Martens, Stedo, Ranko, Samantha, Jason, Preston, Katie, Lady Rot, El Chupacabra, Michael, Cap, Kirk, Manolis, Courtney, Danny, James, Maggie, Gary, Ranko, Daniel, Jane, Michael, Charles, and Ernesto. Menudo. I also want to welcome the newest members of the Ta Conspiracy, Dan and Marisol, Huachinango. I also want to let you motherfuckers know that we are going to be scheduling this fucking show every other week to make it easier for folks who want to set up viewing parties to make that shit happen. So if you're sick of watching the show in isolation and want to throw a stimulating viewing party, just visit my fucking website, stimulator.tv, for details. And be fucking nice to each other, eh?
Kurdun Haneme rengi roji Serbrindin Rengime keski soru zer Em Kurdun Kürdistan